Hello, everyone. John Cruikshank here, the Save Los Angeles with John Cruikshank and Mike Netter podcast. This week, Mike Netter is taking a vacation, letting me fly solo here with last week's guest, our good friend Athena Mondragon, licensed real estate agent, realtor, and author. But before we get going with her and our ongoing discussion in regards to the importance of being an LA County supervisor, I'll once again reintroduce myself. So I am a business owner. I'm a civil engineer. I've run my own civil engineering company for many years. More importantly, I'm now running for Los Angeles County Supervisor, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm very passionate about the issues in the 4th District and in all of Los Angeles County. The 4th District, as I've described in many times, is 32 cities on the southeast part of Los Angeles County, everything from Whittier down to Long Beach over to Torrance, including the peninsula where I live, and also the great island of Avalon and Catalina Island. So with that, we're going to have another discussion today with Athena in regards to the importance of a Los Angeles County supervisor and how our supervisors affect everyday lives of the residents, taxpayers, and people that are just trying to have freedoms and run their own businesses and enjoy their families and this and that. So, Athena, one of the things that you've talked to me constantly about is that you've had an opportunity to, as a real estate agent and as a business person, to talk to people just trying to go about their lives in LA County, and you've asked them, what do you know about this supervisor's race and upcoming elections? And I'd love to hear what you've been hearing.
Well, thank you, John, first of all, for inviting me here. And I believe I validly can represent many people like me, just average citizens in LA County, and all the things that we must do in order to survive and not be part of the many numbers of homeless people out there. So thank you for this opportunity to voice the concerns of, I'm going to say, at least the people that I've been speaking lately out on the streets, because what made me speak with them was that I myself, who I have a level of education, I'm going to say, a bit above average, just a bit.
Right.
And I myself didn't know there was an election coming on February the year 2024, and that's almost like 8 months from now. So, to me, it was shocking that I didn't know. And then the person who is running is somebody who is going to be pretty much part of the government, the governance body of Los Angeles County. And I was thinking, why I don't know this? How come I didn't know this? And hadn't it been because you reached out to me as a just average person who was in a business meeting, where I was having the opportunity to, talk about my personal experience with LA County. With LA Police Department, which is not necessarily part of this, but it's part of those things in government that do kind of work. I am an immigrant. I came from Mexico. I came running away from all the crime problems and stuff. And I have this experience, this uncanny, I'm going to say, experience of having lived adult lives in 2 countries that are neighbors and have all these common issues. And I had the experience of what it is to be car chased by a criminal organization because they want to get you because they use women and they put them in confinement as part of human trafficking and whatnot, which is a problem that also Los Angeles has, so many problems we have in the county.
I think, Athena, what really struck me about our conversations have been that you left a place where you felt there was not safety and maybe the government wasn't as up and up as you'd want that to be. And you came to the United States with the hope and the belief that this was a much better place and that there was honesty and fairness within government. And maybe you found that when you came here, but I think what you've said to me is that you feel that there's been an erosion of that among the people that represent us. And maybe tell us a little bit about those thoughts.
Well, I can only relate to my personal experience. When I came here, I was practically 40 years of age. And I knew exactly where I was coming or running away from, which is, I'm going to put it in very synthetic terms. I was afraid of the government. I was afraid of the government.
What do you mean afraid of the government? I
didn't trust the government. I knew half or more than half the things they said were lies because I had worked for the government. I was a public functionary in the area of education. And I knew there was, manipulation of numbers, manipulation of facts, Well,
you mentioned something about that there's one party in control and people that were in any other party could not be part of the government. You mentioned that to me, that you had to be kind of salute the flag of that party or else you would not be a part of that government. Is that kind of what you were telling me?
Yes, there was the facade of freedom, but there was just one way to go about things. And I'm talking about probably 40 years ago, 50 years ago, in which for 60 years we had the same party, the one, and within that party, the political party called PRI, Partido Revolucionario Institucional, there were all these sharks, all these people who made a living out of being in government, and they were called politicians. So I saw them. I sat across the table with some of them. I, at some point, sat across the table from the president of Mexico because things came like that, not because I was I was representing somebody in a meeting and I ended up there. So I always felt there was an unfairness in the fact that decisions that affect so many people are being made and people are not being consulted.
Okay, so, and now this is where I want you to bring it to modern day, where we are here in Los Angeles County. And one of the arguments I make in regards to making a change in our government is that right now the feeling is that there really is one party that is in control and the rest of us are not really being listened to. And things have changed. Things have changed. Public safety has gotten worse. Obviously, homelessness has exploded. And I think going to your friends and saying, do you know about the elections and that? I don't know even if they knew about the elections, how much they would care, because I think the people I talk to say, well, what's the difference? What does it matter that I vote? Because at this point, it doesn't matter because one party's in charge, one group's in charge, and they're not really listening to the rest of us. And my problems are being solved, but I can't do anything about it, a hopelessness. And I wonder if that's kind of what you saw back at your home country and now what we're seeing here.
Well, one disclaimer, this is my home country now.
Got it.
I made that decision. And I'm going to say, as a citizen, I made the choices. I spent the money and I put my money where my mouth was. And I said, now I'm this person and I'm going to abide by these laws and I'm going to have to learn this language, which was a foreign language until I was 40. And I had to learn and I had to have a crash course of some kind. And I'll talk about that some other time. But where I want to go is, this was a country that gave us all these things. So I thought when I run away from that place, let me tell you one of the things that happened in Mexico, people didn't vote. People did not freaking vote because we knew all the numbers were a lie. It was a public thing that everybody knew. I mean, we called the people the raccoons that would come for the boxes and put whatever they wanted in the boxes. There was a whole political organization, a sub-political organization in charge of altering the vote. I never thought that would happen in the United States, and I'm not going to say it's happening, but we're starting to listen stuff about that. And it worries me a lot because I don't want to I'm not going to run to Canada. I'm going to put all my eggs in this one basket called the United States, and I live in LA County. And I think I don't know how we've managed all these years, but it's getting worse. It's getting worse where we feel unsafer now.
I have two questions for you. So the first one is, you said back then there was one party, but now we know that the other party has had an opportunity to be in charge of the government. Mm-hmm. What happened in Mexico to allow for the other party to get in power? What did the people do? What happened?
Somebody got killed. I hate to say this, but I don't know if you've heard about Luis Donaldo Colosio. He was the candidate to be the president of Mexico, and he was gaining a lot of traction. This is before the internet was generalized. So the papers, the media, the TV channels, it was like, wow. He was very popular, and he began to make pronunciations or statements against the status quo of things. He began to say things like, we're going to change these things from the root. And there are always interests. So when I hear somebody genuinely revolutionary, like sometimes you sound, I want to pray for that person. Because, the few conversations we have had, to me, it was sounding like, okay, he does have a systemic vision of things. He's not talking about empty stuff. So I think it's a good opportunity, but if people don't vote, we're not going to go anywhere. So I would say, how would John Cruikshank help more people voting? How would you? I mean, with independence of who's going to win.
Yeah, well, this is something we have talked a bit about. Being a representative is a responsibility that I think most politicians don't understand the magnitude of it. I always tell people, and I'm a city council member now, and of a great city of 42,000 people, but it's surely not 2 million people. And obviously 2 million is a number that is almost unfathomable in terms of, wow, how do you represent that many people? It's pretty difficult, but what I've learned is that most people don't feel they're being heard, and for you to hear them, you have to stop and actually proportionally use your ears over your mouth. And what I see a lot of times is politicians, they want to talk as soon as someone's done speaking instead of listening and digesting and then asking more questions. I ask a lot of questions, and I truly do want to learn what people are saying, and I think part of the way to best represent people is to not have your mind made up before an important decision ever. Like, you might have your opinion. I mean, we all have our opinions. I can never deny that I don't favor something over another before potentially going and taking a vote on something really important. But I do listen to every single person. I do read everything that's sent to me, and I try to have as much knowledge before I do, because it's not about me. Like, when you represent, you represent. Like, it's all about understanding the problem. And if the problem's too big, sometimes I think, hey, let's break this down to make it more manageable. So
let me
Please.
just interject just a little bit, because you say when you represent, you represent. And I would, obviously, we do, but who do you represent? The majority who voted? No. So, unfortunately, not enough people vote. Like, exactly.
It would be a dream if every person that could vote would vote. But the reality is that's never going to happen. And unfortunately, like even in my first election, because we used to do them in odd years, it wasn't a governor or a presidential year, we would only get 17% of my city voting for city council. So,
and they are educated above average.
Oh,
people.
Yeah. No, I mean, during a governor race, you'd get 60% plus, and presidential, they would 80%.
Okay.
They would come out to vote for the president, but I only got 17% of the vote. So for me to say representing a majority of those who voted, that would be unfair to the entire city. I want to represent everyone that's within my jurisdiction.
Now let me pull you a little bit down the rabbit hole, because I think that's impossible. I personally think that's impossible, and that's why I'm not running for anything, because we all are different. And I'm going to say what's in the internet, whoever puts it in the internet, has now become a source of a lot of disagreements or things that are being. So we have these groups of people pulling all over. how can you possibly represent everybody? I mean, there's going to be points of conflict.
I get your question.
That's why I think the voters...
Because you're never going to hear from everyone. So to say you represent everyone, you're right. That's an impossibility.
Would you say that criminals, no, they don't vote, right?
Well, when they've committed a felony, they
But before they committed, I doubt these people would be in the line to put their ballot.
I don't know. I mean, I think people that commit crimes, they probably voted.
They are busy. They have to commit crimes, and it's a lot of work to put it all together and try not to get caught. And I'm going to say they don't have civic consciousness, which it's one of the things that takes for people to take the time to vote. So I'm going to go in a wild guess and say, I think people who commit crimes do not vote. Therefore, they are in a certain way, they're not represented. So if a majority that goes, it's a way to say, I care for my community, for my country, to go and vote. So to those people, what would you tell them that you can actually do?
Yes. So if you're looking at criminals in their world, and are they voting? I don't know if they vote or not, but there's a reason that crime is being committed and being allowed. Like, there's some people that believe that criminals are desperate, so we shouldn't punish them because we've created that desperation in them, and so they're just acting on instinctual. And there's a little bit to that because
as a Christian, I would agree.
Yeah, we've talked about this, that just the whole issue of homelessness, and there isn't one group of people that's considered homeless. I mean, there's different mentally ill. There's people that are just down on their luck, and there's many reasons that people are homeless. One of the main reasons is that there's high inflation and people are desperate to survive. And so, some people do become criminals because they are desperate. They become criminals because they're desperate for drugs. And so you have to look at what's happening with them as well as how do they and their activities affect society in general. But here's the thing that I think that we need to not forget about is we talk a lot about homelessness. We talk a lot about the gap between the rich and poor, but we don't ever really talk about middle class and poor, like people that are just trying to live their lives, and how can we make their lives better or take the pressure off them so they have better lives. And that's a forgotten group of people.
Yeah, I'm part of that forgotten group of people.
Right. Well, you tell me about
I don't
how
qualify
you feel.
for any programs.
Okay, but how do you feel about how government runs? And I think the word fairness and accountability are two things that people talk a lot about. But I'd be interested to know from your perspective, being a business person, being an author, being someone that's lived here many years, you're an American citizen, you care a lot about this country.
I do.
But how did you feel before you met me in regards to who LA County supervisors were and what they did? And did you have any idea of who they are? I mean, before our discussions.
Unfortunately, this is where I get to talk about specific people, and I'm not going to mention any names. My personal experience is one speech in front of a group and a different attitude behind the group. I happened to type a program and to take care of 200 to 500 homeless women. And I did it in detail because I met one of the supervisors at another meeting years ago. And back then, the count of homeless people was 60,000. I was interested, and I had worked with homeless people. Out of my dime, it's not a lot of dimes, but out of my dime, I had fed people, and I had told them, if you try to follow the 6-week program, which is in this little book that I'm going to give you for free, and I just need to kind of monitor your progress, and I'm going to give you a meal and some money when we meet. And I'm going to hold you accountable for this easy things. I'm a Christian, and I am very passionate about the benefits of following a simple rule called the Golden Rule. And so I was trying to help them come to sanity, recognizing their own contribution in being homeless, meaning taking responsibility for your homelessness. You don't think I've had that problem, John? I've had it. But, I refused to be part of that crowd. And I am a widow, and I'm over 60. But every day I wake up very early, and I have a routine. And I don't think they have a routine. I don't think they have a schedule. Homeless people refuse to have a schedule, and that's one of the things that I observed in trying to work personally one-on-one with homeless people. They always have a reason. The ones that work for me, probably the other 60,000 are not like this, and I just got the bad ones. But I'm going to tell you, it's a problem to get them to stick to a program. They do use drugs drugs, and they just don't have a discipline. It's a real problem. So how are we going to help these millions that we are, these 60,000 people? So it's a problem, and you're a problem solver. What would you do to approach this program? I heard that LA County was buying hotels, and I'm resenting this. Why can't I live for free in a hotel room? I pay taxes and I vote.
Well, this goes back to what I was saying about people that are not homeless, but they're low-income people, and every day they wake up, they have a schedule like you. They go to 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3 jobs just to take care of themselves and their family. They play by the rules. And then laying right outside of the business that they work at is a homeless person that doesn't.
Mm-hmm. And the government is giving them money.
Well, okay, so then that goes back to my question about, and I've talked about what we should do in regards to homeless, and I don't think that the government is the answer. I think the government should allow organizations like Christian organizations or volunteer organizations that have the wherewithal to be able to do what's right, which is basically have homeless people, if they're going to be in some type of home or shelter, to hold them accountable. You can't just show up drunk or high, go to sleep, wake up the next day and do the same thing.
Yes.
And say, well, I've housed them. Well, you haven't really housed them. You haven't solved the problem. And eventually they end up back in the street anyhow. You're not. The real problem is helping these people that can be helped either get the medication they need properly so that they can be healthy again, get some type of training for a job.
Yeah,
there's a lot of jobs out there that people are desperately looking at. But the government, and going back to what the government does things like they raise minimum wage. So that, going back to the small business owner, they can't afford, let's say they could only afford 4 people at whatever wage they were paying them, and people that were willing to work for that wage. By the way, there is no slavery. So when a restaurant or any business puts out a job opportunity and the next door restaurant puts out a job opportunity, if the next door restaurant's going to pay more for the same job, guess what? People are going to work for that restaurant, and the first restaurant that's not willing to pay more, they're not going to have employees. So they have to keep raising their salaries until they can actually meet what people are willing to work for. So for governments to create minimum wages, it creates an artificial salary, and it forces businesses to decide how many employees they now can afford. And if they could have afforded 5 people that could add jobs, maybe they can now only afford 3. So where do those other 2 people go? Okay,
so let me ask you this bottom line question about what would you say to the small business owners, little drugstores, little liquor stores, little, mom and pop shops? What would you tell them you could do as a supervisor, things that you could actually do to help them make their bottom line healthier? Meaning, how can you either reduce a contribution? I have no idea. This is like a crazy question about how can you, a decision that the board of supervisors make actually affect the bottom line of these people?
Thank you for getting to one of the hearts of why I believe I will be an effective supervisor.
Okay.
Because I've run my own business since 1996. I've taken risks with everything by running a business, and I understand the importance of all the businesses out there in regards to creating jobs and keeping everyone going in regards to taxes that the government desperately needs and all that. So here's some of the things I would do. First of all, I wouldn't do things such as minimum wage. I would try to eliminate that. The other thing, drive around and look at all the vendors that are on the sidewalks that are out there that the county supervisors and others just allow to do. Now, I will say, some people will say, well, what are you, against people of color or whatever it is? These people, they need to make a living. Sure. But what about the brick building that's right behind them that sells exactly the same product, that's paying rent, that's paying all the taxes, that's paying employees, that's doing all the things right, and now someone comes out on the street and sells the same product right in front of them and nothing happens to them? That's not fair. Like going back to this whole fairness thing. So that's the other thing. Another thing that kills, and one more item and I'll let you respond. Now the county has asked for another 0.5% sales tax from allowing Sacramento to give them that another 0.5 sales tax for more money for the homeless. Well, if you raise sales tax, who does that affect? It affects all the businesses that actually have to charge a sales tax. LA County already has the highest sales tax based on all the other surrounding counties. So if you're choosing, and the line between Orange County and LA is just a geographic line on a map. Like if you're in the 4th District and you know that for a good steak dinner you're going to be paying this high price for sales tax, this extra because of minimum wage, minimums, and all that, and it's going to be higher price, you're going to just go to Orange County and go to those restaurants or shop.
Well, that sounds good already. Now, let me ask you, is that actually within the decision range of the Board of Supervisors? So how come we've gone this far with this? I mean, I'm assuming the people who are in the current board are experienced people. But they can also be experienced politicians. And I am going to confess, I have a bias. Because what I grew up seeing and what I'm seeing again is thoughtlessness in government and lack of accountability because we do not vote. So,
right.
Why
does it happen? Well,
why would you do different?
No,
how could you convince the other people?
Right. Well, so I've talked about the Board of Supervisors currently, and most of them are career politicians. I don't think any of them have signed the front of a paycheck. They have not run their own company, so they don't know what they don't know. And so that's why it's happened. Like if you're making decisions based on your knowledge base and your experiences, and your experiences have no knowledge of how business works and how the market works and how people decide based not just on the quality of a product, but also the price of a product and how quickly it could get to you. So there's many reasons we do what we do as consumers. And so as a government agency, we should do whatever we can to help our businesses be as competitive as possible. I mean, this one's going to sound a little weird, but like eviction moratoriums. So mom and pops, or even, I don't care if it's mom and pop or big business that owns these properties, they want to rent out to people to renters, to our residents. And those are the consumers. And if you then tell that business, well, yes, you have to not only have this minimum rent, so rent control, and you also cannot ever get rid of them until this certain date. Now, as a business, you have these handcuffs in terms of what you can offer and the prices you offer. And so now you're saying, why is it worth investing in a building in Los Angeles County when a better investment would be to invest in a building in Orange County or in Arizona or somewhere else? Why would someone take their hard-earned dollar and put it into an investment that loses money? It doesn't make sense. And so what you're going to see is, and what we're already seeing is, they're taking their hard-earned dollar and taking it away to other states.
This is why I say it's impossible to represent everybody, because it's impossible. I mean, you cannot represent people who loses their lease? What is the profile of people who lose their leases? Talking in this particular subject you're talking about, which is, so we cannot do something against ownership of buildings against private ownership of buildings without affecting the rentees.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we make the field more even? Because rents are very expensive. People cannot afford to pay $4,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment because most people don't even make $4,000. So a whole family with 10 people end up stuffed in a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom. So this is an almost impossible formula that I believe a very gifted person may begin to crack. I am not that person, but I would be asking you, how can the county create something? I'm going to mention something that I personally care because I'm a senior citizen. So I think there should be protected people and our elders, and I'm well into that category myself, because we're not going to get hired. The market is now for people who are in their 20s or 30s. They don't want me. They don't want me. Any kid in their 10s, they can type faster than I can. And I am a very fast typist. So I have now, injuries created through many years of work, etc. I think us cannot pay $4,000, and we shouldn't be outcasted to Arizona or to die in the desert.
I 100% agree. So in my city of Rancho Palos Verdes, 25% of our population are seniors. And so that's a huge number. And the senior citizens need to be protected. So here's some ideas of how you can protect them. So the state of California has come forward with ideas of banning gas appliances. Well, a senior citizen, as you mentioned, most of them don't work. And they're on a fixed income, whether it be Social Security or other type of retirement mechanism. So it's a fixed income. So they're not making much more money. Now, they might have their own house. It might be paid off, but they still have expenses. So the state of California says, well, we want to float the idea of getting rid of gas appliances because we love electricity. It's even though it's not ready for prime time and to just go all electricity, we know that because we still have brownouts and we don't have enough power grid to be able to handle all new electric cars. But they want to push this all gas appliance. I say no, we're not ready for that. And also because our senior citizens, if they have to swap out all their appliances, that's going to cost them tens of thousands of dollars. For what? For some politician in Sacramento to feel good about that decision. So I say no to things like that. But going back to renters.
Yes.
So when you raise fuel prices with $1.50 for every gallon of gas being part of our taxes. So we have the highest fuel prices in the country. Those fuel prices affect every single thing we do, right? It affects our commute from our home to our work. It affects the delivery guy that's bringing things from the ports to...
I used to be an Uber driver.
Yeah, so you know how fuel affects...
You killed the business. I mean, whoever put that tax killed the business, and I think he got reelected or voted or something. I don't even want to say names, but it was disgusting for me to learn that only 50% of people that were registered voted. I mean, again, I go back to... I think if we don't vote, we don't have the right to complain. We don't even have the right to ask for anything. And I may be pushing it a lot, but if you are a citizen, whoever you are, who may be listening to me, go and vote. It's not a lot. It's just like a 2-hour investment. But they gotta see that we are taking interest on this, because this is why they pass regulations right on top of everybody, because they don't have accountability.
Well,
and they have a bunch of money.
They don't have accountability, and a lot of politicians don't even have challengers. So they're doing a poor job, and they only know what they know, so they're not really suited for the role they're in. I think it's called the Peter Principle, where we all reach our level of incompetence. And that's very true, not just in government, but in corporations as well.
Yes.
And so, going back to the role that I want to be in, there's 5 supervisors, but for me to act as if me personally, can represent all the people is ridiculous. And I would never tell people that. Really, what my role is to make sure that as a group of 5 people making decisions, that we're getting all the information from as many people as could provide it. We make decisions based on not just how our gut says, or our party says, hey, that's how you should vote. We need to listen carefully and learn what the effects are of what we're doing, because government actions really affect our daily lives, and to make those decisions, you need to think downstream of how those decisions are going to affect us, not just immediately, but in 5 or 10 years. And you can see the decisions that have been made over the last few decades have been leading us in the wrong direction. So it's time for a new course so that we start to look at everyone's opinions as best we can, and not just one group of people, which has currently been happening.
Well, this is the way I'm looking at this. Let's say that you get elected. Let's say that a miracle occurs and wake up and wake up LA, or what's the name of the thing? I think it's Wake Up LA. I mean, really wake up people and do something. We're going through a lot of turmoil right now with all these new things. The SAG-AFTRA, they are on strike. I mean, we're starting to actors and artists have always been at the forefront of any of any social movement. So we have an opportunity right now to impact only 20% of the decisions in the county, because you would still have to talk the other 4 people into any revolutionary decision. Yeah. And I would say, and I want to touch on this thing that I just learned, that not only is an important position that impacts or may impact the life I have, but these people last 12 years in their non-partisan direct voting election. I mean, 12 years. So it's like 3 presidencies. Why do they last 12 years? I mean, it's a renewal and I'm going to say a renewal because I think it's very interesting that most people don't even know about this election. And I think it's because why caring about the election? Right. If no one shows up, we have another 4 years and it's $250,000 almost a year. And some of these people, they could not make that money anywhere else. So it's just a job. And, I've read ancient texts and some scriptures say that back in the olden days, government officials didn't get paid because it was an honor to serve the people. And I remember Donald Trump one day said, well, I'm not going to take other than $1 per year. And I'm not asking you to do that because I think good work should be paid fairly at every level. But I also think that the people who get to these positions are not proven. They just knew and were part of a system. And I believe in amazing things. And I think one amazing thing for us would be to start turning around this thing. We don't have to get it done in one election, but we have to start. And the first thing is we have to get involved and go voting.
Well, I love your passion, and I hope people take that recommendation and do that. So a few things. The word revolutionary, of course, is a big word. I would say that, we change things around and use common sense. We look at fairness and accountability. Yes, there's 5 supervisors. With one vote, you literally have no power. Like, the power comes from making sure that ideas that are worth discussing are discussed, and you get 3 supervisors to vote or 4 or all 5 to make a change. And so for me, I'm not going in there just to go fight with people. I could do that with my friends and family. I don't need to do that. I literally want to make a change. And I believe that the ideas, the issues that are the core 4 issues, the homelessness, public safety, infrastructure, and economic opportunity are the 4 things we need to be focusing on right now. And so when I get into office, I'm going to be working with all 4 of the other supervisors to make that happen. And it might not be exactly my vision. And my vision is actually just to fix the problem. If the solution is something that I've never dreamed up, but one of them do, then let's do that as long as it works. That's what I care about. So going back to the career politician thing, I didn't even run and become a city council member till I was 50 years old. I'm 56 years old now. And I'm term limited out. I believe in term limits. The county does have term limits. They used to not have term limits, but now they do. 3 terms, 4 years
Thank
each.
God. Mm-hmm.
And I believe in them because I think that even though some people are amazing and great leaders and they should be in office for many years to help us and represent us, a lot of people aren't. And but every election cycle, every single candidate should be scrutinized and challenged, and that's what I've said about this election. So we only have about a minute left, but in terms of getting your friends and your fellow business owners and realtors out to vote, do you have a message for them in regards to this upcoming election, which is March 5th?
Well, since we only have 30 seconds, I'm going to do my little thing. So I'm thinking, because I know a lot of women and we like to get together and have fun, I would like to invite you to a breakfast with a group of women. All of us tend to be above 50, and we'd like to, have more of an idea of what are your ideas and that you're going to bring to the board of supervisors. And if you do accept that, well, we'll report how it went.
No, so thank you. And I want to thank you again for being here. This is the second week in a row you've agreed to be on my podcast. We just met a few weeks ago. You were inspiring to me. You were able to speak eloquently in front of a crowd of people. You might not have known everyone there, but you talked about public safety and some of the issues you had in your life, and you were just very honest and forthright about that, and your concerns about how things have changed. And the group of people that were around us were clearly people that they were also concerned about public safety, and they voiced that opinion. And I think you really nailed it when you talked about that. And so I appreciated that. I came up to you, introduced myself, and I think we were both realized that there was something special about our conversations that just kind of speak to the average person. Like, how do people truly feel out there, and why is it that many people have just kind of given up on taking action? And like you said, it's maybe an hour or two just to figure out who's on the ballot and vote. I'm out there trying to convince people to do that as well. I want them to know who I am. My name is John Cruikshank. My website's johncruikshank.us. I accept your offer to meet with your group.
Thank you.
What's the name of your group that you're thinking about?
It's the Goddesses Breakfast.
Okay, Goddesses. Well, I can't say no to the Goddesses Breakfast. And I believe that's down in the San Pedro area where you live. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm beginning chapters beyond that, but I'll let you know where, because we depend on the venue, and we have to have certain amount of things.
Super.
So that we can have music. I understand you play some instruments.
Well, I don't anymore, but I used to be a clarinet player in the USC Trojan marching band. So I'm sorry, you Bruins out there. I'm sure you hate that, but I have lots of Bruin friends. So anyhow, Athena, thank you so much for being with us today. Everyone, thank you for joining us on our podcast, Save Los Angeles with John Cruikshank. Next time around, Mike Netter will be back with us. And remember, go to my website, johncruikshank.us, and everyone have a super day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.